Who were the winners?
So let's talk defense contractors, shareholders, the military-industrial complex. So we've got some charts for you to look at here. So first, we're going to take a look at Boeing. We have Boeing, who had a total return of 974%. Now, what they did, Scotty, is this dividend channel drip calculator. They said if you invested 10 grand in 2001, how much would it be today? There you go with Boeing, $107,000. Also, as we keep looking at these, I want you to not really focus on the board member names, but look at their titles. Former vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Let's go to the next one. We've got Raytheon. Total return, 331%. Your stock would be worth more than $43,000. A retired Air Force general, retired Navy admiral, former Deputy Secretary of Defense. We got Lockheed Martin. 1,235%. How is that even possible? 133,000 your stock would be worth today. A retired Air Force general, retired Marine Corps general. Then you got General Dynamics. You got 625%. Your stock would be worth $72,000. And you have a former Deputy Secretary of Defense and a retired Navy admiral. You even have James Mattis there, who we know, former Secretary of Defense and a former Marine Corps general. And lastly, we have Northrop Grumman. 1,196% more, $129,000 your stock would be, and you have a retired Navy admiral and a retired Air Force general. Now, Scotty, it's important to note that all of those companies, except for Boeing, the vast majority of their revenue is given by the U.S. government. So here we're not only helping fund a lot of these wars, they're banking on them too. So it's one of these things where they now have this Brown University cost of war project where they're actually totaling the numbers to see how much we've actually spent. We have over 800 billion in direct warfight costs, 296 billion to care for our American veterans. Now, that number they show, that includes lifetime care and disability, but as far as how much each soldier is making, still have yet to determine. But we do have 85 billion to train the Afghan army and $750 million given by the U.S. taxpayer to pay for the Afghan soldier's salary. So if that's not trying to bribe someone to fight, I don't know what is. And then they have them turn around and kind of flee and as quickly as they did. But with $2.26 trillion total of what this war has cost us, that would be like paying $300 million per day for 20 years, Scotty.
That is absolutely incredible. And then I think in a time right now, Farron, where everybody's going, what were we there for? They say terrorism, that's very generic. No specifics are being given of what we actually accomplished in the area. I think right there is probably the most accurate numbers that were accomplished over the last 20 years and why I think you saw this continued fighting happen within it. But wars are expensive, Farron. Wars are expensive. What do we know about those in the past?
Well, we have England. England just paid off their World War I debt, believe it or not, in the 19-teens. They finally paid off their World War I debt of, at the time, it was $21 billion. December 31st, 2006, okay? Then we had Germany, who had to pay World War I reparations. Again, this is in the 19-teens. Today it would be around $269 billion. It took them 92 years to pay it off, Scotty. They finally did it October 3rd, 2010. But again, it's going to be on, with Germany, they got a little bit of help from the United States after World War II and letting them sell their debt to us to give off to England and France. But it's one of these things, Scotty, where the American taxpayers are going to be paying this for a long time.
But the key is, it's not like we're not already in debt. When you look at the several trillion dollars we had going into this, 20 years ago we were in debt. Why in the world would we even continue to spend this money? And once again, I think we're finding out the real reason is because you have this evolving door at the Pentagon. And I am so tired of people not waking up and realizing why we sometimes get into some of these different theaters and these different arrangements that have nothing to do with American security. It's because of that reason right there, because somebody somewhere is making a few dollars. Farron, like always, thank you for bringing some light to this.
Thanks, Scotty.
Joining us to discuss this even more is Army veteran, combat veteran, and conservative commentator Corey Mills. Corey, I know you listen to Farron's report right now. I don't know if it makes your blood boil because you and I both know that those in the military right now usually are the ones that are least taken care of. We look at what's going on in the veterans hospitals. We look at veterans housing. We look at actually housing on bases right now. They're absolutely deplorable. So why can't we get this right? If we talk so much in this country how much we love our beloved military, why does it seem like these contractors make more than our actually military makes? And why do we end up wasting the money in areas sometimes like what we've seen the last 20 years that don't produce anything?
Well, first off, let me go ahead and say that, yeah, it does frustrate me. You know, I spent over 7 years in Iraq. I spent over 2.5 years in Afghanistan. I was in Kosovo, Pakistan, Ukraine during the height of these areas. So, yeah, I see it. Now, let me break down two things, however. If you're talking about military contractors with regards to those who are providing protection for force protection on embassies or mobile security, you'll actually find that their day rate is cheaper than that of an actual deployed soldier when you look at all of the personnel that's required to actually back him. Now, when it comes to those who are wanting to create and want to continue these endless wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's absolutely the companies that you just described who are supplying materials and equipment and logistics maintenance contracts, spare parts contracts. I mean, these are guys who are making hundreds of billions of dollars. You saw where, you know, Lockheed Martin has one of the highest lobby costs in DC. And what you see is that we need more patents and less millies. What's going on is that all of these people, after they meet that 30-year deadline, they're pinning on those stars, they're already looking at what boards on the industrial complex that they're going to sit on to make millions of dollars, basically advising and helping their buddies who are also in the Pentagon looking to rotate out into those board positions as well. So again, this is where they start putting themselves first, and they start putting all of the soldiers' strategic elements and our national security last, and that's a big issue.
Well, and you know, and I'm just as much frustrated about the trillions of dollars and that we've put in ourselves into debt over fighting wars over the last few decades. But then you also talk about the cost of lives, and those are truly priceless. I look at all of those families that had people return not alive, but in caskets, and it infuriates me right now when you put those, that these are just the calls for it, which is why I want to talk about Afghanistan, because so much as I was looking at the veterans on social media and their comments, I have yet to see one who was not sad at how it ended yesterday, because so many of you lost your friends, you lost what you consider your brothers and sisters in combat over there, and you're going, why did I lose this life for it? Talk to me about Afghanistan. What went wrong, and when do you feel like it did over the past 20 years?
Well, it went wrong the minute that America thought that we were in the business of nation building. What we went over there to do in the very beginning, and I was part of that, was to eliminate the terrorists who were responsible for the 9/11 attack and also stop Afghanistan from being a safe haven to terrorism. That could have been done and perfected with CT operations, irregular warfare, asymmetric warfare, and special operation forces with the support of the intelligence communities, basically going out and putting together HVT packets. We then got into this shift of nation building. And again, a lot of that, as you mentioned earlier, is probably a result of these people who are sitting on these boards today. They wanted to continue to perpetuate this, idea that we need to stay there and arm and build and defend and help to create a democracy, because we're America, and our arrogancy that every other country needs democracy like us just never ends. That's why we see the same thing when we saw the sectarian violence break out in 05-06 after the Iraq Constitution was put in place. When it comes to Afghanistan, this was a flawed plan to begin with. And I tell all my veteran brothers and sisters who are out there, and I've brought back some of my people who are draped in that American flag as well. But it was the suits, not the boots, who was responsible for this failure. The Taliban and all of the terrorist networks in Afghanistan, we had the watch as Americans, but they had the time. They never had to leave, and they knew that they could wait us out. That's why they're called the graveyard of empires.